All right with that? There we go. So that's recording started. Okay, so a little introduction to the Share and Repair Network. We are funded by Zero Waste Scotland with the purpose of supporting sharing projects and repair projects across Scotland. So that is supporting existing projects that are already up and running, but also we have a mission to try and increase the sector, to make the sector stronger, and to increase the number of projects running throughout the country. It's going well so far. About 2.5 years ago, there were 20 projects. There are now about 80 projects up and running. So that's including repair cafes and tool libraries. So running an event like this is very much sort of part of my job. It's part of the reason that I'm here. In addition, for this particular event, we are working with Repair Café Glasgow. And the reason behind that is Repair Café Glasgow came to us a few months ago with a proposal. But yes, I don't want to call it a problem because it's not a problem. Repair Café Glasgow are doing really well. They're really busy, but they have acknowledged that a city the size of Glasgow should have more repair projects going on. There should be more. So to give you a little bit of context, Edinburgh has 3 repair cafes. Birmingham and Manchester both have 4 repair cafes. Brighton, which is smaller again, has 4 repair cafes. Bristol has 8. And then if you go down to Cardiff, where the funding and the political will is very strong, there are actually 14 repair cafes. That's not 14 different organisations running repair cafes, but there are 14 different areas of the city where you can go to a repair cafe. So there is absolutely scope for Glasgow to have more than one repair cafe. So this is open for anyone across Scotland to find out, but we are hoping this is basically stage 1 of saying we would love to see more repair cafes in the Glasgow area. The Share and Repair Network will help you, and Glasgow Repair Cafe will help as well. So that's a little bit of background to why we're here. Next up, we've got a little poll. So Izzy, are you able to put up the poll? Okay, it's a really simple question. Q, if you could answer that, have you ever been to a repair cafe? Okay, I think, yes, so some of us aren't going to. Oh, okay, so if are you able to share that result? So 55% of people are saying no, you haven't been to a repair cafe, which is understandable because even though the sector is growing, there is not at the moment a repair cafe in everyone's community. So first off, absolute basic bit of advice, if you're interested, is yes, go and see one of these projects. Go and see more than one of these projects. So obviously Repair Cafe Glasgow is a great one to go and visit. It's busy, it's vibrant, it's a wonderful organisation. You know, take something along, go and have it repaired. But also, Izzy's going to share in the chat, she's going to share the map that we have of projects across Scotland. Have a look at other places in Scotland where there are different projects, because if you're setting up, it's a really good idea to maybe go and see a smaller, newer project and see how they're doing. So as I said, at the moment, there aren't many in the Glasgow area, but sort of nearish, nearby, we've got ones, Cumbernauld, Biggar, Crieff, Dollar. Obviously, there's a few in Edinburgh. And it's just a really good idea to go there, be a participant, and just get a sense of how it works, because they're all slightly different as well. Even though we're going to talk about the standard approach, there isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all, and all organisations do this slightly differently. If you want to take a group of you to see a project, there is funding available through the Community Learning Exchange, which is part of the Scottish Community Alliance. If you're a member of Circular Community Scotland, we can support an application to you to this by you. And that provides just a little bit of funding to cover your expenses and also to pay costs, any costs incurred by the host. Just if you are in a position to do a little bit of research and go and find out a little bit more about a project. Okay, so for the people who haven't been to a repair cafe before, maybe don't know so much about it, we're just going to play a little film, just a minute long, just to give you a sense of what repair cafes are like. So Izzy, if you're okay to go ahead with that.
Give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound on the video so I know that.
Okay.
Do you have something broken that you'd like to get fixed? Repair cafes are community events that happen all over Scotland, run by local charities and social enterprises. There, volunteers can help and teach you how to fix your broken things. From small electricals like lamps or toasters, clothes and jewellery, to mobiles and other devices. If you can carry it to your local repair cafe, they'll help you try and fix it. Repair cafes are a great way to save money and help the planet. You can also have a cup of tea, meet people from your local community, and see repairing in action. All repaired items are checked for safety before you take them home. Most repair cafes are free, but donations are always welcome. Find your local repair cafe at www.shareandrepair.scot.
Okay, thank you, Izzy. I think sometimes it's quite difficult. I don't know how the quality of that was for you, but it gives you an idea of what repair cafes can be like. So the footage from that was from Repair Cafe Glasgow and also the Edinburgh Remakery. And it gives you a sense of how vibrant and lovely repair cafes can be. And you're free to use that film as well. We have that available if you're wanting to promote the idea of a repair cafe within your community. So I'm going to move on now to a short presentation to talk to you about what's involved if you are interested in starting up one of these projects. So Izzy, if you're okay to start off with the sharing. I also just need to apologise because I have had a bit of a cold, so if I start coughing, or I'm just going to be drinking orange juice throughout.
Is that working, Jane? Can you see that?
That is working. That's great. Thank you. Okay, so if we could move on to the first slide, please. Okay, and if you can run through. So this is just a little bit about why repair cafes are great things. With Circular Community Scotland, all of our projects, we talk about these three benefits to planet, people, and pounds. Repair cafes, I mean, it's a bit of a no-brainer. You know, we're saving things from going into landfill, and by doing that, we're reducing carbon emissions. And we are saving people from having to buy new stuff. So there is a really positive impact environmentally. In addition, all of these projects take place on a community level. So they're really good community engagement projects. As you saw on that short film, one of the things that's really lovely about repair projects is that they are very, very sociable. It's a really positive way to chat. It's relaxed. It's a nice way to meet people. And also there's a really positive impact for the volunteers themselves. It's volunteer run, and hugely beneficial to the volunteers, and they can build skills and confidence. And then finally, in terms of the pounds, it saves people money. You know, the current cost of living crisis, this is really important. And which of these impacts is important to you obviously depends very much on your own community. You know, I was speaking to somebody the other day, and they were saying people in their community aren't really, you know, saving the planet at the moment is not really their top priority. They're just concerned about saving money. And so if you're wanting to promote this, you want to promote the benefits, and that would be, you might want to push the saving money side of things. We have other projects that have maybe come to this idea through perhaps like the Men's Shed movement, which is as much about the community of makers and repairers coming together and doing something together. So it might be that actually the people side of things is what you want to emphasize. But across projects, all of these three things are really positive impacts. Okay, if we could have the next slide, please. Okay, so how do we actually know that people want and need repair cafes? We did some research last year, well, we commissioned the research. Actually, an external body spoke to a good number of general population on a survey asking about attitudes towards repairs. And we found out that 79% of people would rather repair something than buy new. And I think we can all personally identify with that. We don't like chucking stuff away. If there was a way to repair it, we would much rather do that. Okay, next slide, please. However, when we asked people what they had thrown away in the last 6 months, 51% of people said that they'd thrown clothes away. Similar with footwear, 45% of people had thrown away electrical items, and then you can see the figures for the other things. So there is a bit of a disconnect there. People want to repair stuff, but they're throwing things away. And the reason for that, the barriers to repair, is people don't have the knowledge, they don't have the skills, and they don't have the opportunity to repair. And that is where repair cafes come in. They're absolutely filling a need. People want to be able to repair, and they can't currently do it. Okay, so that was a really short summary about why repair cafes are a good thing, that they are needed and they're a positive impact. Okay, so what can we do to help you in set up a project? So the Share and Repair network, if you join the Share and Repair network, you will get access to the members area of our website. And on that, you will find this comprehensive written guide to setting up a repair cafe. And it will take you through step by step all of the detailed things that you need to think about when setting up one of these projects. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm just going to be picking out a few of the key things so that you're aware of what's involved. In addition to those resources, we also run training and events like this one today. We have a regular newsletter. We provide one-to-one support. So if there's particular issues, you can get in touch with me. I'm not an expert, but I can put you in touch with the people and the resources that will be able to help you. And we also do research, like the research that I was talking about, and we represent the sector. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so getting on to the sort of things that you actually need to think about with a repair project. So first off is your organisational structure. So Repair Café Glasgow are actually quite unusual in Scotland in that they are a standalone organisation specialising in and focusing on running a repair cafe. Most of the repair cafes in Scotland are actually projects of larger organisations. There's a photo there of Fixing to the Future in East Lothian, and they have a tool library and a repair cafe, and they run lots of other community-based climate action activities as well. And there are a lot of similar organisations to that across the country. Some organisations, we have some men's sheds, we have community development trusts. So you can start from scratch and be an organisation like Repair Café Glasgow, if you like. We do have advice in the setup guide about organisational structures. However, with the funding landscape as it is at the moment, we would really strongly recommend that you actually set up as part of another organisation. So if you are an independent group at the moment, we would strongly advise that you find someone to partner with so that you don't need to go through the whole process of setting up governance and the legal side of things, just because at the moment it would be unlikely for you to find, it'd be challenging for you to find funding for that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, volunteers. So volunteers are the lifeblood of repair cafes. Most repair cafes rely very heavily on volunteers. We do have a couple of projects where they pay repairers, but that's more of a social enterprise model. And if you're interested in that, then please do get in touch with me separately and I can talk to you about that. What we're looking at today is a classic repair cafe model where all of the volunteers are at the heart of what's done, and volunteer repairers and other roles, other people who are actually running the events. So how do you go about finding these wonderful people in your community, these wonderful skilled people? This is, in terms of setting up a project, this is really where you need to be prepared to spend the majority of your time. This is where your energy and focus needs to be in finding this group of volunteers. There's lots of different ways of going about this. Most people start off with, a call out on social media, which is a really good place to start, but you're probably not going to get a team of volunteers just from one post on social media. So you need to think about other things that you can do to start bringing people in. Events are a really good thing. So if you have an information event, trying to get people along just to find out a little, so without having to sign their lives away, they can come along and find out. You can have that as part of another event. You could have food, you can have something to make it a little bit more attractive, to try and get people along to find out about repair cafes. You can also have stalls at events. So if there is an event happening in your community, is there an opportunity for you to go along and talk about a repair cafe, talk about volunteers, talk about what it is you're wanting to do and how you want to get people involved. And then the other thing is to think about the skills that you need from volunteers and have a think about where those people are in your community. So for example, clothing repair, is there a local sewing group? Lots of people during the pandemic got together to make face masks and scrubs. Where are those people now? Can you get in touch with them? Would they be interested in coming along to a repair cafe? In terms of mending skills, sort of electricals and furniture and all of the other things that get repaired at repair cafes, is there a men's shed in your local community? That's sometimes a good resource for people. What businesses are there? Are you lucky enough to live in a community where there are big manufacturing businesses, something like BAE or Rolls-Royce or another huge factory, which is going to be packed full of people with engineering skills? It's worth finding out, do they have a business newsletter? Do they have a staff notice board? That sort of thing. Industrial units, could you go around and flyer all of the industrial units in your area, which hopefully will be a hotbed of people with repair skills. So it's really a question of thinking laterally, doing a bit of brainstorming and thinking about who in your area has those skills and where do they hang out and how can you find them. So if you're in a rural area, where are the agricultural maintenance, where does maintenance happen for agricultural machinery, that sort of thing. But it is hard work, and as I said, this is the focus really of where a lot of your work will be. But Paula is going to talk to us about the wonderful volunteers at Repair Café Glasgow and give us a sense of who they are, where they come from, and why they come along to repair. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so some of the practicalities. The venue, most of the repair cafes in Scotland are in pop-up venues, so you don't need a fixed workshop or anything like that. You can do these events on a pop-up basis. You need to think about the usual sorts of things that you would for any event. So is it accessible? What are the public transport links like? What is the parking like? But in addition, you need to think, does it have sufficient chairs and tables? Is it well lit so people can actually see what they're doing? Are there sufficient plug sockets if you're doing electrical repairs? Is there somewhere to make a cup of tea? All that sort of thing. In terms of days and frequency, it works well for visitors if you start to have things on a regular basis. So most projects run repair cafes on a monthly basis, some are on a quarterly basis. Repair cafe, the Edinburgh Remakery runs their clothing repairs on a weekly basis. But if you're able to get it in the diary so it's a regular thing and people know when it is, I think Repair Café Glasgow is last Saturday in every month. Not sure. I'll check that. Paula can tell us that. So it's just something that people know. But again, you will need to check that with your own community and with your own volunteers. There's no point going for a regular slot if your volunteers can't make it. So some projects do happen like weekday evenings, but most are weekends. Marketing and branding. So the logo there for the Repair Cafe, that is the International Repair Cafe movement. If you join the International Repair Cafe movement, you can use all of their logos. You can download their marketing materials. There are certain criteria you have to fulfill. I did mean to look this up before we started, and I completely forgot. I think there is a small fee, and I think it's things like you have to be, you can't charge, and it has to be fully volunteer-led. Can't remember, but you can use their branding. Similarly, there's a project down in London called the Restart Project, and they have what they call restart parties. And you can, if you sign up to be a member there, you can use all of their branding. You can have access to putting listings on their website. You can also have access to quite a nice dashboard which shows the carbon savings that you're accumulating over time. But that is specific. You have to have a certain percentage of electrical repairs within that. So there are slightly different criteria for different group brandings. Alternatively, you can just do it yourself. You can. There is no. I can't remember what the word is. Anybody can use the term repair cafe. So you can just set it up as a project. If you've already got existing branding, you can just do it yourself. A handy thing, as I said, we've shared the map of our projects. Just go and have a look at all the different social media of existing projects. Have a look at how they advertise themselves, how they promote things. Use Canva. And you can just do it yourself. And again, we do have a lot more top tips and suggestions in our repair guide about marketing your project. Okay, next slide, please, Izzy. Oh, are we back one? That's it. Okay, running an event. I'm not going to talk too much about this because Paula is going to talk about the details of running an event and how that works. They're the sort of things that you need to think about. I just want to sort of say about the cafe side of things. Repair Cafe Glasgow have an amazing cafe with home baking and people serving you tea, and it is a really lovely experience. But you don't have to have that. There are lots of projects who literally have a kettle, a pack of tea bags, and a packet of biscuits, and that is absolutely fine. People can help themselves. And similarly with repairs, I know in the film it said you can come along and bring anything that you can carry and people will try and repair it. You can just specify what repairs you can do. I meant to say when we were talking about volunteers, you don't need to get to a stage where you have a volunteer for every single repair that you can possibly think of. When you're starting off, it's absolutely fine to have maybe just 3 or 4 volunteers and say, okay, what we can cover now is clothing, jewellery, furniture. Or for different months, it might be 1 month you can do electrical repairs and the next month you focus on clothing, that sort of thing. So that's all I'm going to say on that, because I think there will be a lot more detail from Paula and we can follow up on questions after that. Okay, Izzy, next one. Okay, so the serious things. So this is the sort of thing that people either bury their head in the sands about or get quite nervous about. But it's all fairly straightforward. As I say, we have lots of support for this type of thing in our guide. We have lots of details. So with insurance, you do need insurance. It's prudent to have insurance. The best approach is to talk to your current insurer and explain what you're going to do and see if they will cover you. If not, there are companies who do standalone insurance for repair cafes, which you can have as an add-on to your existing insurance, and that covers public liability, employee liability for volunteers, and it also covers product liability for the stuff that you are repairing and as that's being taken away. And in order to comply with what's needed for the insurers, you need to have a robust risk assessment and health and safety procedures. So we have a template that you can use for health and safety, for risk assessments. And health and safety is something that you do need to take seriously, because you're talking about electrical repairs, volunteers, members of the public, but it's not rocket science. A lot of it is really, really straightforward, good practice. There's a lot of advice out there. We ran a session on being safe and legal recently, and the recording of that is available. So all of this stuff exists already, and it's nothing to be nervous about. It just needs to be taken seriously. The disclaimer is a useful document. This is something that people sign at the start when they come and bring something along to have repaired. And it's basically them acknowledging that they may not get the thing back repaired. They may not even get the thing that they're bringing back in the state in which they're handing it over. And it's an acknowledgement of the risk that they take and that they're happy with. And then data protection, that's just to do with any data that you take. So as I say, all of this is gone through in great detail in the guides that we have. Take it seriously, but don't be intimidated by it, I think is the gist of what I'm saying with that one. Okay. Finances. So this is the last slide. It's just like, how much does it cost? What is the money involved? I've not put any values on these, but it's really, these are the sort of things that you need to be thinking about. So setup costs, you will need basic tools. Sometimes repairers, if you get volunteers, sometimes the repairers will bring stuff along themselves. Quite often they will have their own toolkits. But it's a good idea to have some basic tools. Again, we have suggestions in the guide of what sort of things it's helpful to have. And also it's good to have some marketing materials up front, particularly for volunteer recruitment and as you are going out to set up your project. And then the ongoing costs, you've got the cost of your venue, however much that may be, your volunteer expenses, which is covering any costs incurred by the volunteers in being there, but also making sure that you have enough volunteer expenses to reward the volunteers in some way, whether that's a social event or celebrating birthdays or just looking after them, essentially, being nice to your volunteers, because if you get good volunteers, they are like gold and you need to hang on to them, wrap them in cotton wool. Repair consumables and tools, so that's an ongoing cost. There are consumables involved. Again, the volunteers from Repair Café Glasgow can talk more about that if needed. Training. I forgot to say, with the health and safety side of things, we can provide up to 2 places per organisation on PAT testing training, because you will need, if you're dealing with electrical repairs, you will need PAT testing certification. It's good practice to make sure that every electrical item is PAT tested before it's handed back to a customer, but we can provide training for 2 people to get certification. It is online. And some people like to supplement that with an in-person course, and it's good to have a first aider on hand if you can. I've mentioned insurance. I think it's around about, it's not much over £200 a year for the Repair Cafe insurance itself. And then governance and overheads, that entirely depends upon your organisational structure, but presumably you will want to make some contribution to that. And then staffing, again, it depends entirely on your setup. Some projects are entirely volunteer run, so obviously they don't have any staffing costs. But I think if you are part of a wider organisation and you do want staff to deal with this, then you will need at least part-time staffing to cover volunteer management and organisation of the events. In terms of income, you can ask for donations. Most projects do ask for donations. Some have a suggested donation level. It's entirely up to you. Charges are more when people veer more towards the social enterprise model and they actually have specific charges for specific fixes. And then grant income. So again, you need to be a constituted organisation if you are going for grant income. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I think that's it. The final thing that I forgot to say along the way was in terms of the launch of your project. As I said, you can absolutely start off with just maybe 2, 3, 4 volunteers. You can go for a big all singing, all dancing launch if you want. But one thing that works quite nicely is to have a soft launch. So you could just have an initial event for friends and family, relatives, I don't know, people who know the repairers themselves, just to have a little practice, to have a run through so everyone can see how it goes. It's a really good learning opportunity. And that is everything that I'm going to say. I say our next event is in October. We have events on a regular basis. That is called Making the Most of Online Resources for Repairs and Maintenance. And that is sort of a deep dive into support for repairers. So rather than a lot of repairers, you don't need to know everything about everything. A lot of people look online while they're actually repairing, and it's basically looking at going beyond Google and what support is out there that is verified and you know it's good advice for repairing and for maintenance of tools. Okay, so that's me for now. If you want to stop screen sharing, thank you very much. And so now I'm going to hand over to Paula Pyke from Repair Café Glasgow.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jane. Really good introduction. I do have a few slides, but more because they're more interesting than looking at me. We were hoping that Lauren Hooper, who is actually our one and only paid member of staff, she works a few hours a week for us, put them together, but she's unfortunately able to join us. But anyway, what I plan to do today is answer a few questions that actually Jane asked us to think about, a little bit about how we got set up, about our volunteers, what's it like to run an event, and then later we'll talk about where we can maybe support organisations, certainly in the Glasgow area, who are interested in setting up a repair cafe. It's something that we've been doing for a while, and it kind of helping others to get going with the resources, of course, that come from Jane as well. I've got with me here as well from Repair Café Glasgow, Andrew Curry, who's electrical repairer, technical repairer, also one of our board members, and I can't see Deirdre on the screen, but Deirdre Nelson's here as well, who's one of our textile repairers, and actually has been there longer than I have, so she can maybe answer some of the historic questions better than myself. But let's just get going anyway. So Repair Café Glasgow actually was set up back in 2017, 2018, before my time, with a Climate Challenge Fund grant. So it was primarily thinking about environmental impacts and carbon savings in their activities, but was also working with schools, doing a lot of stuff on education. And I think it came from the co-founders and those who were involved. There was already kind of some repairing things going on. This was up at Kinning Park complex, I think. And so it grew into a repair cafe and was very successful. I came along just after COVID hit, which was quite a big impact on the organisation, obviously. We tried to do a few things online, but of course we couldn't hold events. And then back in sort of 2020, 2021, slowly into 22, started to grow again as a repair cafe. When we started doing that outside, actually in the deep end, part of Govan Hill Baths, and slowly grew again. At that point, there were still some repairers who had been around from the beginning, which was great, and saw us through the tough times, Deirdre being one of them. And then we slowly grew our resources and our volunteers. Currently, we run events monthly in Clyde Community Hall in Govan. You can move on the slides, Izzy, when you feel like it. To be honest, they're not entirely a story here, but we run our events in Clyde Community Hall. Last Saturday of the month, Jane's absolutely right. It's really good to stick with the date. We were doing the fourth Saturday of the month for a while, which was a disaster because sometimes there's 5 Saturdays in a month and that confused people. So we're the last Saturday of the month. But we also run every other month. We hope and try to run an outreach event, generally speaking in the Glasgow area. And that's mainly because currently we're funded by Glasgow Communities Fund. Hold it there for a minute, Izzy, which is helping us to reach out to communities within Glasgow. So when I say outreach, we will either be approached by a community group that's interested in perhaps hosting a repair cafe, possibly just a one-off event, And as Jane said, it's often a community organisation that's doing all sorts of other things as well. Could be environmental, could be social inclusion, could be around poverty, whatever it might be. We'll pitch up, and we've done events in Kings Park, in Paula, Campus Line, Pollock Shields, around and about. We've also done work with University of Glasgow and with some libraries as well in the Glasgow area. So we've kind of grown. I'll come on to volunteers as well in a little bit more, but in terms of the background maybe of how we get our volunteers might be worth saying now. So I would say mostly what happens is people who are interested in volunteering or are interested in repair cafes pitch up and come along and see what happens. So I would say most of our volunteers at the moment now come from people who come along and see, who sort of got a genuine interest. That's probably a good 60–70% of the people that join us as volunteers. In terms of, we also have quite a big social media presence, and sometimes we'll get people who are just interested in what we're doing, and we also have an online form on our website for volunteers to sign up to. But I would say mostly when you're thinking about volunteers, it's growing, looking around your community that you have, encourage people to come along and see what we do and bring them on board. I think in terms of the numbers of volunteers, we're sitting around probably around 45 to 50 volunteers who are on our books at the moment. There's a few more that are there that are very occasional, and we have quite a solid number of a good 30 that are very, very active volunteers. And at each event, we probably have around 17 or 18 volunteers. In fact, if you slip down a little bit further, Izzy, actually, let's go to, well, that's fine. But we have, yeah, there we've got around about, there's a slide with our volunteers there. So our average number of volunteers that are coming to an event is somewhere about 17. Obviously, our regular events, we have more, and sometimes our outreach events, they're less common, or we don't have as many volunteers coming along. So what kind of background do they have? I think we've been very, very lucky in terms of our volunteers in that we have a core that have got very good skills, particularly around textiles, around electrical and electronic repairs. And I think that really is something really to think about when you're setting up a repair cafe. You really want to have a core of volunteers who are highly skilled, or pretty skilled, because they're going to help bring on board new volunteers when you're hosting your events. Let me think what else we need to talk about. So how do we, let's think about, I'll just talk a little bit there about the size of our events actually. You can see that slide there. We have around about 50 repairs at each event. That can vary from 30 to, I think the highest we had was in the high 80s. I remember that one very well. It was a very busy one. It was in February after a Christmas break. So we can get a lot of repairs coming in. On average, we're fixing about 78% or giving advice for them to get it fixed, and maybe a part or something. What we will do when somebody comes, it will be either we can repair it, or we help them source the part to fix it, and they'll come back to get it fixed. Or sometimes we can't fix it, which is very disappointing, but we might help them think about how they might recycle the materials. So we're moving on to the next slide. The types of repairs that we have, they can vary from, you'll see they're mostly what we get: small home electricals, lamps, radios, blenders, power tools, garden tools. Obviously, it's something that you can carry, and people have tried carrying quite heavy items. But we are happy to take electrical power tools, but not things like oil powered. And then with lots of little miscellaneous things like ornaments, toys, prams, phones, and computers. We've got a little bit here about the types of, so let's talk a little bit then here about our volunteers. So here's an example. Charles, he's one of our board members as well. He's a school technician. He's also a trained carpenter, and I think electronic engineering was his background actually. And he's been with us since 2021 and is part of our board. And you can see there what he says, what's his favourite part. I think the thing about volunteers is they absolutely, particularly the repairs, of course, they love to see things being fixed, and the joy of being able to keep something from the landfill site, or giving it a little bit more life. I think because of the repair shop show, people will often bring things that are very valuable to them personally, so it's extra special when something like that is repaired, particularly like toys or ornaments. Next repairer is Lynn. Have a quick look at Lynn. Lynn is one of our textile repairers. I think Lynn has been with us since the beginning as well, pretty much. She says 3 or 4 years, but actually it's a good bit longer than that. And as you say, she watches the repair shop show. Mostly she's doing her sewing, but a lot of our volunteers are happy to try out different things, help in the cafe or at the registration if need be. And again, you know, she loves doing it, loves seeing people prepare, but obviously loves the cafe and cakes, as I'll talk about in a minute as well. Then our next repairer, Luke. Luke is a student from Glasgow University. We've been working quite closely with students since we did a collaboration with Glasgow University about 2 years ago now. We got a little bit of funding from them to do an event. And it's been great. So you'll see there he's a design and engineering student, and he was part of an organisation called Engineers Without Borders for Glasgow University, a society group, and their sewing group also came along to our event at Glasgow University, and he's brought his pals, he's brought some friends, and has encouraged younger people to be involved too, which is fantastic. So it's grown our volunteer set. And finally, we've got Becky there. Becky, you see, is a producer of an independent radio production company. Fantastic skills in its own right. She helps us at our reception desk. Absolutely fantastic. Because we've grown, we very often have a very long line of people waiting to come in for the repairs. But it's really, really important for us to capture what that repair is going to be, so that we can make sure we find the right repairer for it. We capture a little bit of information on the person as well, in case we need to go back, follow up on a repair, or we've got a question, etc. And that information is only stored for that reason and that reason only. Thinking about how we run an event. Oh, let's do the next bit actually around volunteer skills. I think we covered a little bit around this, but when we're bringing on board volunteers, really, first of all, you want to understand what skills they've got and what it is that they want to bring. Important thing about being a volunteer, we'll all know that from all the work we do, that, you know, it's something you've got to get something back as well as give. It's an absolutely, you know, two-way relationship. So it's important that volunteer wants to come along and is bringing the skills that you want on board. So we have an online application form, or somebody who comes along can fill in a paper copy, and we ask the type of skills that they want, or what's the kind of things they want to do, from electrical repairs to making cakes, making baking. The cafe part of the event is very important in terms of that kind of community feel. Once we bring somebody on board as a volunteer, bring them along to a repair cafe, see what you think if they've not been already, and then ask them to shadow and experience volunteer, whether it's at the reception desk or whether it's in this picture here with one of our repairers. And that's assessing their skills as well. So it's a soft, it's not really training, but it's assessing their capacity, being aware of what they can and can't do. Andrew could maybe come in a little bit more on this as well. It's getting a feel for what is safe for them to repair, and what kind of training we can then look at for giving them. One of the areas where you've talked on, Jane, you know, electrical safety is really important. It's important for the volunteers. It's important for the people that come to visit the cafe. And mostly things will be absolutely fine, but you've got to think about the safety in place. And more recently, as well as encouraging all our volunteers who work on electrical products to do the online PAT testing, electrical safety training. They're changing the name, fortunately, thank goodness, because PAT doesn't really make sense. But we've also been running organised events, training events, using a trainer, just to go through the kind of practical things of why electrical safety is important and the things you should be thinking about when you're doing the repairs. And we now, obviously, we PAT test things as we go along, but now we have a kind of an official exit. Let's double check that's been tested properly on our checkout desk as we go along. So in terms of running an event, we ask volunteers and others to come along about an hour or so before we start. We run our events from 12 till 3. We've been having, this is unofficial, but a kind of soft start, unofficial earlier start about 11:30 to try and queue manage. But we come along and we set up the event. That little picture there is just a kind of a schematic of how we set up for the room in Clyde Community Hall. You'll see, I don't know if you can see it very clearly, but we've got a sort of bank of desks at the back, which is the electrical repair and everything else, kind of tech repair, with tables with the tools at the back on the left. We've got a bank of the textile repairers, tables in the inside, real cafe kind of look to it, tablecloths and all, and a lovely cafe there with a open desk, kiosk. And at front at the desk, we have a check-in desk, come along, tell us what we've got, and then a checkout desk as you're leaving it. At that checkout desk, we also capture feedback. What was the event like for you? You know, what can we do that's different? And occasionally we do also run some workshops, simple things like bring along your own sewing machine. Let's see if we can help you, you know, dust it down and use it. And then we follow that up with a sewing event. And more recently, we've been trying out, and maybe Deirdre can talk a little bit about that, our kind of doctor idea, our zip doctor or our stain doctor or our whatever, and somebody will be there to kind of go a little bit more detail into a specific kind of thing that needs fixed or help with. So I guess I want to go back a little bit though. I've talked about, you know, the kind of what's the word, the logistics of it. But I think the important thing for anybody who's setting up a repair cafe, as Jane said, was what is your motivation to do it? Why do you want to do it? And what is it that you're trying to get out of those events? And I think for us, there are, as you said at the beginning, there's a kind of there's the environmental, there's the social, and there's the economic. The social bit, I think, is really, really important for a whole bunch of reasons. First of all, you're setting up a community of volunteers, which creates a community in itself, but you're also creating a community event, some social cohesion around where you have your repair cafes, whether you're in the same place or if you're traveling around. And I think when you come to a repair cafe, I thoroughly recommend to the 55% of you that have never been, I think it was about that, please get yourself down there. The buzz that you get from a repair cafe is amazing. It is just lovely to see. Obviously, the repairers are there and they are enjoying and loving fixing things. But there's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of conversations, there's a lot of different chats, there's chance to meet people. There's individuals who come along every month. They just love coming along for a cup of tea and a natter, and, you know, are rummaging in their cupboards to try and find something for an excuse to come along. But it's a really lovely event. And if you're doing it as part of your broader community activities, then you'll know all that anyway. But it works just for us doing our repair cafe too. In terms of funding, I don't know if I touched on that. We do have one member of staff that we pay a few hours a week, and I do think that's really valuable. If you can do that, it's really important, because once you get bigger and you've got volunteers coming on board, one a week probably, or 1 or 2 a month anyway, who are interested, you do really need a bit of coordination of that. We do have funding, which is good, but I don't think you need that much to make it happen. We do accept donations, and that probably covers the cost of our hall each month. We don't ask for it, the buckets are there. We don't ask people explicitly, but people tend to want to give something, particularly if you've saved their granddaughter's teddy bear. So it's something that you need to think about. But yeah, I think there's lots of benefits from the repair cafes on all those aspects. In terms of saving money, it's difficult. I know some organizations have set it up as a social enterprise, and in fact, we are bizarrely a limited company by guarantee, but with an asset lock, so we are a social enterprise technically. But it's a very difficult model at the moment to make money from. I think you could, because you're actually repairing things that often have got quite low replacement cost, but a big environmental cost in terms of disposal. And it's a difficult one. And I know some organizations have approached it. Remakery do a bit of that, and in Edinburgh. And we did used to have an organization here, Remade, that did it as a social enterprise model. But we're still running it primarily from a community led, volunteer led, and not for making money event. I'll stop there just now. We can come back to the support we can give. I'm just going to ask Andrew or Deirdre if they want to add anything.
I can add a small amount on maybe a bit of logistics and safety and stuff like that. So I deal with a lot of the logistics, the running of the event, and then mostly on the side of tools and consumables and things like that. So I can answer some questions about that stuff later, but generally what I would say is, safety is an important thing. So to highlight that again, some of the useful things that we implement are RCD plugs. So you can purchase these pretty much anywhere. They're quite cheap. They're about £5. And essentially this acts as like a trip breaker. So I think that's one of the first barriers, or sorry, later down the line, but it's one of the most important barriers to protect yourself against being shocked and electrocuted. You shouldn't ever be working on electrical items that are kind of open and exposed to live wires and things like that. But having those RCD plugs on the end of your extension lead or something like that are it's just a great thing to use. Consumables and spare parts and things like that. So we get a lot of items like lamps, hedge trimmers and garden equipment, a lot of kettles and toasters and things like that. So the kettles and toasters are difficult ones for replacement parts and things like that. But things like garden equipment that comes in where a cord has been cut, buying little waterproof joints to join up that cable and to fix that cable properly and safely is a useful thing to have in hand. Switches and lamp supplies are very useful to have in hand. Fuses, things like heat shrink for electrical stuff, screws and tape and things like that. So those are all kind of basic useful things to have on hand. And I mean, I could have an entire list, but those are the basic things. Tools, so you'd want to invest in your own tools, but one of the things that we see quite commonly is when you get the more experienced, more keen volunteers, they tend to bring their own tools in. one of the most basic things is to have one of those little toolkits that you get, like the iFixit kits with lots of little different bits. Those are very important because a lot of appliances don't, they use special screws with screw heads that are not, it's not a Phillips screwdriver or a flathead screwdriver or an Allen key. It's sometimes a star shape, which are the Torx bits, or you get triangle bits and little like slotted. There's a whole bunch of things that manufacturers like to throw one or two of these screws into the mix on their appliance, and then you can't take it apart unless you have that special bit. So those kind of general sets that you get from iFixit, those are really useful. And then something that was touched on earlier was kind of how repairers don't always have all the skills. And I think I've never repaired the same item twice ever. Like, and I'm talking about specific brand and model and things like that. Like, you'll have multiple toasters, but there'll always be different brands, there'll be different models. So there's never like a way of knowing how to take something apart. And a lot of the time what I advise is you'd be looking for YouTube videos, things like that, that are just really useful. Often people have tutorials on how to take things apart. And yeah, there's no shame in it. It's every single device is different to open and take apart. And yeah, so you don't need specific skills and things like that. The skills that are really useful to have is when you have someone who's a professional in the area of electrical items and things like that. That essentially what you're looking for there is a basic understanding, and they know what is safe and what is not safe to do, and those kinds of things are then able to be transferred over to other volunteers. And generally people have more experience and more skills than they think they have. So to have a couple of the experienced people who can guide people when they have like small questions, or to guide them in what's safe and not safe, generally people actually have more skills than they think in terms of just taking something apart and having a look and finding what's broken. Yeah, but I'll leave it there unless people have other specific questions. Unless Deirdre wants to say something now.
I was just really going to say something. I mean, I'm mainly involved in the textile side of things and also sort of planning a bit of outreach, but Textile Repair Cafe is pretty straightforward to set up, because, and even in terms of materials, we use a lot of waste materials, like excess stuff that people have had in their drawer. We're always getting donations of threads. So the odd things we need to, I mean, obviously there was the sort of buying sewing machines at the very beginning, but some of the repairers actually bring their own sewing machines. And a lot of the stuff we've been given a lot of stuff, and you'll find that happens often. You'll be given, once people know it's up and running, particularly in textiles, and it's quite small scale, you know, in terms of, because that's one of the issues we've had over the time is storing. Where do you store your stuff? And that's maybe something that we could, or Paula or Andrew could talk about. Andrew's come up with a great system for storing our things. But yeah, I would say textiles, and you know, that might be something if one of your groups was interested in, is just setting up a textile cafe, repair cafe to start with, or one element to start with. I think that was mentioned before, because then you can sort of see how it goes. Paula mentioned the doctor idea that came out of, we were trying to work out a way we could do some workshops, but it was at the time when quite a lot of people that we knew that were sort of running workshops already had lost their funding, and we didn't really want to step on toes, you know, running. I think before we've done making tote bags, you know, making more like sort of making workshops. So then we thought maybe what we could do is actually highlight particular things as a way of drawing people to Repair Cafe, and as a way of sort of creating a bit of fun and a bit of sort of a bit of social media. It's quite a nice social media one. So every month what we're trying to do is have a different doctor that's specialist in something. So we've had like a zip doctor, darning doctor, we had a stain doctor during the week, and we have or last week, and we have you know, it's like a lab coat that says repair doctor on the back. But it has attracted, the darning one particularly, it attracted quite a few people. And luckily at that time that particular repair cafe was quite a small one, so I could spend quite a lot of time with people showing them things. But it just adds an extra layer to it. So you might want to think about something fun that's unique to your repair cafe, and that you can sort of bring people in. The other thing that we do as textile repairers sometimes is do little bits of, I suppose, outreach, because a few of the ladies are retired and sometimes I'm self-employed, so a bit more flexibility. So we've been doing, tomorrow morning, we're going to Apparel Exchange and helping out. It's a children's charity that does clothes, and we're showing the volunteers there how to repair. So often we can be a bit more mobile as a textile team, also in terms of like the stuff we've got to carry, but also we have a bit more flexibility in our working lives as well. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was, I think another thing that's come out through, I think we realized at certain times that the audience was sort of very similar all the time. So I think that's got us thinking as a board, how can you outreach to maybe groups that don't make it? So either vulnerable groups or groups that maybe, like specifically, I've been thinking of things like refugee charities, maybe places where people really, have limited clothing and need their clothes repaired, or homeless charity where you could help. So we've been talking about that and trying to arrange that as well. So I suppose trying to think about how you reach a diverse audience, so it's not the same people all the time, and it's also not, you're maybe trying to use some of the skills that you've got. But again, that's something we can do further down the line because our repair cafe is established at the minute. So, but I mean, I think one of the things that I find really interesting about it is the amount of vulnerable people that come along. Like Paula said, people that come along sometimes just for the cup of tea, and they'll spend a bit longer, or they'll maybe find something in the cupboard because they want to come for the social aspect of it. And I suppose that's having time to spend with people is really good. And recently we had a quieter repair cafe, and actually we spent so much time talking to people, and it was really nice to have time, not to feel like you've got to get the repair finished and actually move people on, because I think it's an important part of people's lives, for some people to have that time. So I don't know if you want to say something about the storage, Andrew.
We'll wait and see if we get a question for it. Maybe pass back to Jane.
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. It's great to have a real proper insight to how it runs from experienced people. So yeah, if anybody does have any questions, if you could start putting those in the chat. I know there's been one in that I saw just about food safety, because obviously with the repair, with the actual cafe element itself, is there anything that you've come across that you need to think about with the cafe element of things?
We have put all our cafe volunteers through the food safety training course. There is an organisation that we can access for free in the Glasgow area. What's the hall called at Tory Glen? Is it Victoria Hall? They've got funding that can support community groups for trainings. So if you fish around, you can normally find that training for free or for not very much.
Because you are serving homemade food, aren't you? And
yes,
do you do soup as well?
We're not cooking on the premises, so actually you don't technically, as a community organisation, you don't have to do it, but it's just good practice. Also the hall that we use, Pyke Community Hall, we're keen for us to have that training because they have a proper working kitchen. They serve community meals out of that regularly. What we tend to have is home baking from volunteers, and a couple of our volunteers do quite a bulk of that, and also tend to make us a soup and bring along some bread, so that there's a hot meal there for people as well, and it's very popular. Also, it's to feed your volunteers. Something I forgot to say is that you really, really, and I think Jane talked about, you really need to look after your volunteers once you've got them. So we want to keep them fed and dry, give them coffee, tea, cake, and they're probably the biggest consumers, but those that visit are get involved as well. And also we run regular kind of just volunteer events. We've got another coming up quite soon, where actually we're going to get people just to bring their own things to come and get fixed
Right.
and learn and upskill. But we've also done some upskilling events. But it's really, really good to you'll all know that if you're all involved in other community groups anyway. But
Excellent. Okay, so yes, Fraser has said yes, we would like to know about storage. That sounds yes, because I think that is probably something that lots of groups would face, particularly from the pop-up side if you are visiting. So what magic solution have you come up with to the storage issue?
We don't have a magic solution. Storage is a tricky thing. So we are fortunate enough to be able to kind of rent a space in Clyde Community Hall where we can leave all of our tools and things like that. So we have some like metal cupboards, just standard cupboards with shelves that I think somebody was getting rid of them. So we took those on, and essentially what we do for storage now is we just run on a system of having like plastic boxes which are organized into different categories. So whether that's hand tools or electrical spare parts or screwdrivers and things like that. What we have just kind of upgraded and made that system into all like a uniform system is just purchasing those plastic boxes, which are called really useful containers or really useful boxes or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally what they're called. Those are really nice because the lids lock on. They're pretty sturdy. So we kind of expect them to last quite a long time. And we went through and labeled all the boxes. And this is something that I don't think is I don't think it's a super important thing to do in the beginning. It's once you start becoming you start having more events, there are more tools, and things can get disorganized really easily. So as we've gone further down the line, we've tried to organize things more and more, and we just label the boxes so people know what is supposed to be in the box. So when they take something back, it goes back into the right box. But essentially, those boxes of a certain size, I can't remember the sizes. They label their boxes in liters. It might have been the 18 liter and things like that. But those boxes fit into the cupboards really nicely in terms of like the length of the box. And essentially, when we have a cafe, we open up the cupboards and we take all the boxes out and we lay them out on 2 tables. And then we take all the lids off, we put it under the table, and people can then both just see, they could read labels if they wanted to, but you've kind of got all your tools spread out in boxes, and people can go to whatever box they want for a consumable or for a tool and things like that. So those are really useful for just containing not perfectly organized collections of tools. They're easy to carry and things like that, so they can go in a car and move venues and things like that. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. I think for other projects where it is completely a pop-up and there is no there's no storage on site, that sort of is the solution, because it may be that you've got to factor in transporting your equipment. So it's got to be stored somewhere, whether it's at people's homes, garages, whatever. There's going to be a certain amount of equipment, I think, that needs to be a little bit transported around. The other question from Fraser was, and this is one that comes up quite regularly when we get people from repair cafes together, is what do you do about repairs that take longer than the time you have available?
So generally, it's quite impressive how busy events get, and generally we are able to keep almost everything within those 3 hours, and people will be able to do multiple repairs within those 3 hours. When it comes to items that are going to take longer, I think that's something that you need to decide as an organization, whether you are going to, if you have space to even take and hold on to items, and a space for someone to come back to repair that later, or whether volunteers are comfortable with taking that repair home and then bringing it back the next month or the next event that you're open, things like that. So I think as an organization, you need to decide whether you're going to take those on or not. So I think the options are either you tell the person that they're going to have to bring it back to the next repair, the next event, a volunteer could take that item home, and they've decided that they're willing to take that on and repair that at home and bring it to the next event. It could be that you have a space where you can store those things, and volunteers can come next week, the next day, all those kinds of situations, and they can have a space where they repair that and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think those are the basic kinds of situations.
I think just looking at the different groups that we have in Scotland, it's a common question, and people approach it in lots and lots of different ways. And we do have some projects that have actually operate more of a repair service, in that people drop. It's a completely different model from Repair Café, but people drop stuff off and then pick it up a week later. So it gives the volunteers as much time as they like to get it fixed.
Can I just add to that though, if somebody does take anything home or anything like, make sure you record that on your, we use an electronic spreadsheet, a Google sheet. So we've got a comment section. It just helps when you're trying to follow it up.
Yeah,
so
that's really good. And Deirdre, you were wanting to say something?
I just thought one thing we do, and it's really clear on our social media, is we say what we don't repair and what we do repair. And I think that's important because often people might turn up with something and they've travelled. I mean, we've people that travel right across the city and they've come along with something and then it can't be repaired. So putting information out to think about what you don't repair, as well as, and in textiles in particular, like a lot of people come with alterations, and they might come in with a few things to be altered. And, it's quite tricky when you're stuck in the position of like having to say no to somebody and they've traveled with their stuff. So I think the clearer you are about what you can't do, the better.
I think you do have a really interesting, something for everyone to have a look at. You have a really interesting list on your website, I think, of stuff that you don't do on your FAQ, which I refer people to that quite often, because it's just quite useful to say, yes, we can't, nobody can say they can do absolutely everything, and it's quite good to sort of be quite clear with their restrictions.
And one extra thing I'll add on to that on the same topic is exactly as Paula says, take a note of items and contact details for people that if you're taking something home or taking something outside of the event, make sure you label it. There are definitely people who don't bother to pick up their items, or they just leave them, or things like that. So you got to want to keep track of where that item comes from and who to contact. The other thing that we find is, in terms of not having a lot of storage space, is I think you should be careful of, often when something is not fixable, people will want to leave that with you, and you need to decide as an organization whether somebody is going to take that item to the recycling center, or whether you're going to have a kind of policy of saying, look, we don't have storage, you're going to need to take that to a recycling center yourself. So that's going to be something that people are quite often going to want to leave items or donate items. And if you do or don't have space, you just need to decide what to do on that front.
Okay. Thank you. Another question was about first aiders. I'm just going to answer that in terms of other projects. I know some other projects deal with that, because if they are hiring a hall, sometimes there will be somebody within the building who is a dedicated first aider, so the group doesn't have to think about that. But I'm just wondering what you do as an organisation. Do you have do you always have a first aider?
Well, yeah, it depends whether you're at an outreach event or your own event. We've got, because we're at Clyde Community Hall, we pay for the hire of that hall. Actually, they're technically supposed to supply the first aider, but we've also got our member of staff is a trained first aider as well. So yes, generally speaking, and if you're doing a risk assessment for an outreach event, then you need to check whether they would have a first aider or whether they would apply. So you'd want somebody around. In fact, we had our first cut last month, actually. Oh no! Yep, one of our repairers cut his hand while inside
just on that a little thing to put in on the risk assessment. When we had our event recently about insurance and things like that we had somebody, an insurance broker, in talking about policies and just saying that he has never had a claim against a repair cafe. So just to put that out there, even though it might seem a little daunting, a little scary, so far to date, he was not aware of any claims against repair cafes. which is good.
Jane, do you think I should talk about what we can offer?
Yes, there's one question here. Just trying to see who that was.
Somebody did ask about can we help one? I think it was
Yes.
Mary O'Brien.
Yeah, so Mary, do you just want to say hello and say which organisation you're from?
Yes, hello. I'm from Creating a Sustainable Life. So there's a few of us here today because we have just got we've just been told that we've been awarded funding to start a repair cafe. So
you're Renfrewshire, is that right?
Yes, we're in Renfrewshire, and I have visited the Glasgow Repair Cafe, and it was absolutely mind-blowingly wonderful. Well, we've got lots to live up to, but it's just in terms of, obviously we're starting to look for volunteers, and we've had quite a few offers of people who want to volunteer, but given we're new and you're sort of suggesting the value of doing a bit of shadowing, I just wondered if there was any opportunity for any new volunteers that we had, because obviously because we're new, they can't shadow a more experienced volunteer, whether that would be something you could facilitate, somebody coming up and just maybe shadowing for a bit.
Okay. That sounds absolutely fine. Yeah, definitely, Mary. I mean, don't come en masse, but maybe come along to one of our repair cafes. If we know you're coming, and just let us know what kind of the skill set that individual has. Is it a textile repairer? Is it an electrical repairer? Then we'd be delighted for that. Because there's nothing better than just seeing it happening, actually. Also, if you've got funding, we intend to run our electrical safety training quite regularly. There's a cost to it. We pay a trained trainer to do it for us. Can't remember what it's coming in at per person. I don't know, maybe 50-60 pounds or something. I can't see why, maybe some of your repairers could come along to the training if we've got space on that event. For more electrical safety training. We can talk about that.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I remember you guys coming up to see us, actually. We're in an interesting place because we've got money from Glasgow Community Fund, which helps us to run our events in Glasgow, including outreach events. That money is not there for us to necessarily encourage setting up another repair cafe. That is part of what we want to happen. The movement should be huge. Our grand plan would be great if there was a repair cafe in every high street in Scotland. It just feels like something that should be bigger. So whatever we can do to help make that happen, we want to. So while we do outreach events through our money, we also have we've got some capacity, not a huge amount, but some capacity to maybe go along to an organisation who wants to set up a repair cafe. So, for example, we went to Cumbernauld a year or so ago, and I think they've got their one kickstart. We actually, before my time, went up to Boat of Garton, and now Cairngorm's repair cafe is enormous, probably bigger than us, I'm not sure, but we came along with our volunteers. We've also we went to with Kate Howell over to Fintry Development Trust and ran a repair cafe there to try and encourage some interest. So we're really keen to try and if an organisation thinks they're getting close and they've got volunteers, they've got kind of potentially the hall, the space, the somebody to run it, we'd love to come along if we can en masse and run a repair cafe with you and your potential volunteers. Even outside Glasgow if we had to, but we're really, really keen to try and do it within the Glasgow area to try and just grow the size and the access to repair cafes in the area.
Well, that all sounds wonderful. I think we'll be back in touch.
No worries, yeah. Just send an email. You probably got it. hello@repaircafeglasgow.org.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank
And
you.
there's a message there from Mavis. Mavis, do you just want to say hi and tell us a bit about your project and what your plans are? Is that Mavis Mack from E-Bike Freedom?
Hi, this is Mavis. And so it's an interesting idea for Repair Cafe. And we are quite new organization based in Glasgow, West Glasgow, and we have a team of volunteers. They are cycle ride leader, and also our main business is to repair e-bike and also a traditional bike as well. So we are thinking to set up the repair cafe in future, but because we don't have we would like to get some experience for from the existing cafe as well. So that's why, if any existing repair cafe would like to offer some daughter bike services, maybe we can think about to help 1 or 2 sessions and see how it's going on to exchange our experience.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. In fact, what might be fantastic, Mavis, if we ran a joint event, we don't take bikes now, and not because there's 1 or 2 people who probably could repair bikes, but as you'll know yourselves, you need to have the right kit. Often it's a kind of general maintenance question, and it's about giving that bike a good old going over. Sometimes we don't have the time or the resource to do that at our repair cafes. So we have run, can't remember, was it Bikes for Good? We ran an event with Glasgow Tool Library and Bikes for Good up at somewhere just north of the motorway.
Yeah, we're quite close to Bike for Good West End, and
Okay.
because we are based in Hillhead, our shop is not big enough to run a repair cafe. So if we have to run a repair cafe, we have to hire a venue as well. So, but in long term, I think maybe we are looking for a bigger shop. But during the transition, we would like to know more how to provide more services to the community, because majority of our customer are delivery drivers. Because when we're talking about e-bike, so who have the need to repair e-bike is the delivery driver, obviously. So our target group are ethnic minority and new immigrants, and that's why we have we have the experience for bike repairing, and this particular in e-bike.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we could run a joint event in Govan or something. Get in touch.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get in touch.
That does sound, yeah. Hopefully that sounds like a good connection for Repair Cafe Glasgow, for the west of Glasgow.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully another potential, fingers crossed, another potential Repair Cafe for Glasgow. We've just got a few minutes left. Has anybody got any other questions at all? Anything else? I think there was one question about the budget, what you should be budgeting for electrical equipment, but I think Andrew covered that with mainly the. Oh, Lindsay, you've got a hand up.
Hi, thanks very much. I'm so sorry I was late on the call. I have COVID just now, and I think my brain has just addled. I had 10:30 in my head, and it was 10. Is it possible? So I am here on behalf of Argyll and Bute Climate Action Network, and David Haggerty, who I think volunteers with the Glasgow Repair Centre. I think he maybe helps on the front desk sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, had suggested I come along. So we were wondering about starting maybe a repair cafe in Helensburgh. Would Helensburgh be outside of your Glasgow area, or do you think you might manage to maybe float down here if we got it all up and running and stuff to do a joint launch thing?
Yeah, I'm sure we could come to some agreement there. Helensburgh would be great.
Okay.
When we've talked, we've had sessions with our volunteers around what do we want to do, how do we want to grow, and yes, obviously you've got restricted funding that tells you what to do to some extent, but as a group of volunteers, we've enjoyed outreach events and going further afield in the past. So I imagine that would be definitely something we'd like to think about. Yeah, I mean
that'd be great.
And also, Lindsay, I think the idea that sustainable growth we're talking about was sending volunteers to shadow at Repair Cafe Glasgow.
Yeah, that would also
sounds,
be really good.
if that's doable, and I don't know if that would be covered by the Community Learning Exchange Fund possibly that's something we will do. We have got a recording of this, so Lindsay, you can catch up.
I was
on
going
the
to say
start.
this is
Yes.
recorded, but also, yeah. Could I get the slides? Are you going to send it? So
yes, absolutely. We will send a follow-up email to everybody who's been here. So just before we finish, anybody who hasn't put their name in the chat box, could you just do that and let us know your name and which organisation you're from in the chat box, so we can check that off. And then Martin, you've got a question.
It's not Martin, it's Jamie.
Oh, right.
I was saying to Martin, I'm sorry. Sorry, I was late to the meeting as well. I'm
okay.
from ILM Highland up in Alness in the Highlands.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
Literally just started yesterday. Been brought in to set up the Repair Café.
Brilliant.
Here, so we've got all our funding in place now for all that, and we just got all our funding in for lots of tools and all that last week. So yeah, so couldn't join earlier. Usual first day connectivity problems. So spent an hour trying to. Anyway, so sorry I came in late, but pleased to hear it's been recorded, and I'll look forward to hearing what everybody said.
Yeah,
and,
if you put
because
your
it would be really good to be in contact with a number of people, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we start up.
Yeah. If you put your contact details in the chat box, I'll send you an email separately, because I think ILM are members, but if you're new, then I can just let you know about the sort of resources that you should have access to. Yeah, huge learning curve. Okay, so
my own background is in community learning and development, so I've worked in that for a number of years and on lots of community projects. So hopefully this is the next one.
Yeah,
the
so
next
that's
successful
a really
one.
a good starting point. Okay, great. I think right, okay, Izzy, I think we can stop the recording now. I think that's grand. And yeah, that's perfect timing.